Alrighty, everyone, this is the web news. This is our short form episode type, whatever you want to call it, episode variants, where we read a short blurb and then ask some questions and we discuss and resolve them. Again, just a short form episode and usually on video as well. This one is, do we use technology differently? I may retitle this one because I want to make that clear as to who the we are, and you'll get that right now with this blurb. So, when techies use technology, they use it differently than the general public. This naturally happens when using advanced tech, as the general consumer usually doesn't touch advanced tech, but it also happens when doing everyday tasks. So, for example, techies will naturally stay away from some features of an app, even if they've popped up in like a tooltip or something like that. So, for example, new gimmicky AI features, they won't use things like having shortcuts on their desktop oftentimes, and they won't even use quick access options in menus. They'll usually go directly to where they want to get right to where they want to get down to business in the app or whatever the heck it is they're using. However, this is different for general consumers. General consumers will often read what a feature claims to do, take it at face value, and then actually just start using it right out of the box, thinking, okay, like this app's going to be able to do this for me. And there has been several times that I've seen friends, family, and even customers use tech, and these are non-techie people, use tech in a way that I've never expected. I'll give an example. So one quick example is we had a website where we used CMS that we had to do, you had to use for government purposes. We had to use it, and there was an option there to upload videos, and the person was just en masse uploading videos. Even though I said, hey, we don't have like a powerful enough server to transcode, and we don't have enough space either, but use all the other features. Now this message got mixed up somewhere in the grapevine because there were several staffers, and the person starts uploading videos like crazy, and I said, hey, you can't actually do that because of the transcoding. And the person was like legitimately shocked and was like, yeah, but the menu says I can. And it was kind of a wake up call of like, oh, like you kind of have to block that stuff from users. And that's what we ended up starting to do is we started to kind of strip out some of the features, hide things, or just make it so that if they clicked it, it wouldn't work, kind of thing, just while we were working around in the beta. And so our questions slash topics to discuss and resolve is, as developers, we oftentimes play a major part in the UX design of what we're building, especially in small businesses. But with these unique experiences, are we really equipped to make experiences for consumers? Because we have a unique experience, they have a unique experience, and those two don't really meld. And then I'll say the second question, but we can, of course, repeat it later if we need to. Are there two experiences that we need to work for, or excuse me, that we need to worry about? Is there enough of a divide there, basically, for the techies and then for the general consumer?
Yeah, so the first question, as developers, we oftentimes play a major part in UX design. Very true. I don't think that's a good thing a lot of times. And for a lot of what you're saying,
Right.
I think it's really important if you're building a very big general consumer product, to have that separation of someone that knows UI UX and developer. Let me be clear, there can be some really good UI UX designers and developers. There's those unicorns exist, right? But a lot of times a developer is very, how do I call it? Snobbish, maybe is a little bit offensive, but like they are, they use products in a particular way. And when you're too close, so when you're developing something, you also have a completely different perspective on how it's supposed to be used. And that becomes a very big issue when you get something out there in front of someone and they use it completely differently. You start to get almost angry if you're the one that's like doing the user interviews. You're like, why are you using it like that? Like, I obviously designed it like this, but you're saying obviously to the person that's using it differently.
Right.
So it's obviously not obvious. And that's where you have to step back and you have to realize that your assumptions are usually going to be wrong. So if you're a solo product owner or if you're trying to make a little project, I always recommend people to get something that they assume that you're going to make your assumptions. They assume will be something used in one way. Get it in any shape or form to a customer as quickly as possible. And take what the customer says, give it to a few people, obviously, not just one. And take what they say as gospel almost to how people are going to be using this product. If they do it completely differently than how you do it, then you're wrong most of the time. So you're going to need to adapt to whatever they're doing. Even if it doesn't make sense, even if it's illogical, what they're doing is what regular consumers, your customers, if you're picking the right people, are going to be using your product as. So adapt if you're solo, if you don't have the ability to go out and get a UI UX developer or a designer, you're going to have to be willing to change, willing to pivot, and willing to adapt to a customer's needs really quickly, because you're probably going to make the wrong assumptions. That's the reality of it. And if you go into it thinking that you're the smart one here, then you're most likely going to fail.
I mean, that actually summarizes something that I wrote about. It was like my first Medium article that actually got traction that I remember, which was called the newcomer effect, a UX consideration. And I recapped a situation. I'm saying this from memory, so some of this might be wrong, but I recapped this like situation I had where I was like trying to navigate a hospital. I was taking like a family member to like an appointment or something like that. And I went into this hospital, and like obviously there's a UX to a hospital. Sounds stupid, but there is. And there's like signs that tell you where to go and things like that. And there's supposed to be people like at information booths and things. And it's like you walk in, there's no one at the information booth. It's like, okay, well, there's no signs. Okay. So then you're like, okay, like, where's this? Like, we'll walk down a couple hallways and find a sign. You find a sign, it's like, this one goes to the Sky Bridge. And you're like, okay, but that goes to a different wing, but like, what's in each wing? Like, you know what I mean? And so it's like the Sky Bridge to the people that work in the hospital or who go there frequently for appointments, the patients, whatever. They're not newcomers, is the point. So their UX is just like, I need to find the Sky Bridge because they know that. Oh, the Sky Bridge is here, and they go. Me, I'm like, am I in the right area? Am I in the intro area? Where am I supposed to go? And then I was standing beside an info booth, trying to talk to a nurse. And the nurse wouldn't answer me. She was just like completely like, oh, this guy's an idiot. And literally, like, I was like, hey, ma'am, like, miss, whoever, like, where do I go? Like, totally didn't even acknowledge me. And it's like, I get it, you're busy, whatever, but it's like, where am I supposed to go? But what this does is this is creating a problem. I shouldn't be at that nurse's desk asking them, which is probably why they ignored me. But there was no one at the info and there were no signs. So there's a UX there that's a problem. Somebody who's been in the hospital probably like knows, buried in the blueprints of the building and in like the diagrams of like the organization of the building, wrote those signs. They put that information kiosk there and didn't put someone there. Right? And it's a huge issue. And you know when it became a huge problem? Was during COVID, at least in my own personal observation. Because you would talk to the person at the front and it's like a COVID checkpoint and they're like, doing the mask and they're checking you and they're doing all this stuff and they're asking where you're going. But then at first, there was no one there to tell you where to go. And they're like, well, you have to get in and out of here quick. Actually, that's not possible because I'm a newcomer here and I don't know where to go. Right. And so now you're creating an issue. Not only am I like, clogging up the nurses station when they're in the no COVID era, but you're trying to get me out of here quick in the COVID era. And there's still no one there to tell me where to go. Cause it's like, oh, we didn't want more people here. Well, now you have a bunch of people wandering hallways that they're not supposed to be in, technically like exposing everybody or whatever, right? Going against the whole like pandemic, like, hey, stay away from each other and this and that, this and that. It's like, you need to have a newcomer like UX consideration. And general consumers are going to be newcomers, right? They're going to go to Canva. They're going to go to whatever. And they're going to be like, oh, this, Canva draws me stuff. Cool. Oh, it has an AI thing. All right. Oh, it can do this. All right. And they just start using it. Whereas like me, like I didn't start using the AI stuff in Canva for a while because I was like, oh, it's probably gimmicky. It's probably gimmicky. But once I heard about it for a while, it's like, okay, it's been here for a while. Maybe I'll check it. Then I check it. And it's like, oh, it is useful. Because as a techie, I see so many features come and go that it's just like a natural thing where I'm just like, like whatever. And sometimes it's interesting enough where I'm like, hey, like I'll try something right away. But I mean, a perfect example is WordPress. Like when you first log into WordPress, there's the dashboard page. I don't click on the, blog post stuff in there. I go right to that menu on the left and I go right to where I need to be. I don't use any shortcuts or any widgets. I don't check the status of the site in there or anything. I go specifically to where I need to be. I want to do blog posts. I click on the post button. I don't look at the summary of the recent blog posts, right? Like we don't really use shortcuts. Like we are the shortcut as techies. But I'm dismissing the dashboard page. Someone out there, guaranteed, probably thousands of people use that thing where they go like, oh, what's the health of my site? I have a few people that write for me. Oh, there's 5 or 6 new things. That's like legitimately useful for that person. Right. Whereas me, if you're like, Matt, like what UX would you use? If I'm writing it for me, I'm like, get rid of that dashboard page. I just took away someone's like super useful tool. And so I do think there is actually a divide big enough to answer the second question. I think there are two like unique experiences. I may reword that question a bit in the writing, but I think there's two unique experiences. And then they're unique enough that like you need to consider them separately. And to be honest, as like someone who is into tech, I don't know how equipped, and I think Mike, you touched on this. I don't know how equipped we are to deal with it because sometimes you can prepare, you can pretend you're a newcomer, but there comes a point where your nose is buried so deep into that code or that blueprint, like I mentioned earlier, where the newcomer effect is lost on you, and you have to like emulate the newcomer experience in your head, where you're just like, I'll just put a sign up, that'll fix it, and it's like, sign for what though? Like,
That's
what's
the
on the
thing.
sign?
Yeah. It's a harder problem to solve because you have, I think the way I word techies is power users. You have the power user of an application that use it drastically differently than your normies or your normal users you would use it. And the thing is that the power users are always the loudest, but they're also the smallest portion of your community usually. So you have to, it's very difficult to balance because a lot of times you'll do something for the normal user that's obviously better for them to find, like you said, like a welcome path, a really good welcome path, but that causes 2 extra clicks for a power user, and that causes a shitstorm in social media and causes a shitstorm in your forums and stuff like that because those 2 extra clicks mean X amount of time to them, right?
Yeah,
Because they're
100%.
using your product way more than everyone else. And so balancing that out is usually requires something like, opt in, opt out flags all over the place, being able to have old systems in place while new systems are in there some way, like Windows has forever. There's ways to access the old 98 control panel. Part of that is because a lot of people are just used to it and that's how they use it, and part of that is because obviously they need that for the older code that's still in Windows. But like that kind of stuff, accommodating for that, the longer your product goes, the longer your cycle is, that problem will continue to be a problem forever. So building a good solid infrastructure at the beginning where you're like, I could see myself maintaining this for 10 years is a good idea. Not from an over engineering perspective, don't think about that too much, but like from a perspective, I like this feature, I like these things, because the chances are you might have to maintain the random things that you didn't think were that important 10 years from now. If your product is still going, you're lucky enough, because some person from the first days of your product is still using one specific random feature in your product that they just can't live with it anymore. And you don't want to lose them as a customer, and you don't want to have that perception be damaged. So you do janky ways to help them continue using their product. And yeah, you have to solve for both experiences. That's the reality. And you need to figure out also where your major, like what your most important audience is, and solve for them maybe a little bit more. But you can't forget your core audience as well. Like you can't forget the power user because they're the ones that can actually alter the perception of your product down the line to the point where new users won't even want to use it.
And I mean, we see that, we actually do see that quite a bit, like with, I mean, this is gonna date me, but on BlackBerry phones, you could use a bunch of keyboard shortcuts, right? But if you were a person that just used the keyboard for the primary function, which was texting, you could totally do that, right? And it wasn't taking away from each other. It wasn't doing whatever. You could open up the context menu and then like quick search by like, oh, I want a quick menu. I'm gonna press C and it'll go to the compose, right? Or the first C in the context menu. We see that with Windows, like you mentioned, with like the control panel still around and there's different functions and things like that. But like at the same time, like Windows is slowly becoming very consumer friendly, where it's like, hey, we're doing the Mac thing with the centered start menu, and we're doing like the universal search thing, and we're having it so you can connect your phone so you don't have to like keep checking your phone back and forth and things like that. And like there's a lot of like consumer friendly things in there. And like you're 100% right that like, Windows adding a step to something, the media might come down on them, or like social media might come down on them and be like, why is there an extra step here? But it's like, yeah, but 80% of our users don't understand what this means. And it's like, yeah, but the 20% is the loudest. But it's like, yeah, it makes sense because maybe the 80% aren't even on social media. And the 20% are like, look, everyone's saying this is stupid. It's like, yeah, but we have numbers, right? Like they have insights to say there's 80% of our users don't know what this means. So we have to have an explanation step And we have to have it so that like we force you to scroll through it and agree to it or whatever in order to get you through. I mean, how many people like do we work with, Mike, like entrepreneurs or whatever, that are just like, yeah, yeah, skip, skip, skip to tutorials and tool tips and
Yep.
things, and then ask us like, well, how do I get started? It's like, what? It was just trying to get you started.
Most people. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, those are tutorial tool tips and stuff like that just never work, unfortunately, because people just don't read.
They just don't read them. And you know
Yep.
what? I'm guilty of that. I'm sure you're guilty of
Yep.
that as well.
100%.
And it's just it sucks, like especially when you're trying to just do something on an app, where you download like an app to your phone specifically, and you're like, I just need to quickly do this, and it's like, this is how payments online work. It's like, no, I don't need to. I don't need that information right now. I'm trying to pay for parking or whatever, right? Something like that. So I don't know, like I guess like the I don't know if I want to already say conclusion, but like I guess the conclusive thing that we're coming to is that really there needs to be a lot of like testing, A/B testing, or just user testing. Like have people come into the app and literally say, "Hey, I don't understand how to use this." And I mean, we had a very simple Google extension for like Chrome extension, sorry, for the Chrome browser, List by Design. I don't think it's up anymore, but the point is that we had a bunch of people testing it, and it was like 5 or 6, but we had people like literally tell us like, "What does this plus do? I don't know what this means." And it's like, "Oh, okay, we went a bit too hard on the iconography." Or and like sometimes we would like we would add a bunch of labels, and people would be like, "Oh, it's obvious," and like the labels are overcrowding. It's like, okay. And we had people all over the place. We had people that were techies, non-techies, gamers, whatever, right? A whole bunch of stuff. People who love to shop because the thing was, could be used for Amazon shopping and things. And we had people like test it, and they would tell us like, this doesn't look good, or this doesn't make sense, or I didn't know how to check things off. I couldn't tell if things were checked off. But it's like, okay, we need more feedback than this. And like the only way we would have got List by Design to be as successful as it was back in the day was through really, I mean, it's a tiny app, but through that testing. Something that simple, like to just to recap what List by Design is, it was literally just a way to like have like basically fancy bookmarks. And you would think like, oh, it's just a list, and maybe you could put the price in there and the description. That's what it was. And then you could check things off, and you could export the list as a CSV, I think it was, and things like that. You could have multiple lists, like, oh, this is my shopping list. This is that. It would sync across your browsers. It was pretty good like that way, right? Like it was fancy bookmarks is really what it was. And that sounds super easy. But when we put it together, it was sort of like, yeah, yeah, this will work. And the product, like, there's literally a point. I don't know if you remember this, Mike. There's a point where we were like, we're going to ship this, but we'll get people to test it. The testing didn't go well. Good, right? This one didn't go well. And then the whole product looks different. And then we shipped that. And then looking back on it, like, because we were able at the time to boot up different versions. Even back then, we're like, holy crap, this like version that we ended up was so much better than the one that we were initially going to ship. And that's because we're taking into consideration that newcomer effect, the different UX design of like, this person's a gamer and all they're going to track on List by Design is games. And there's no way to put a price in here or something. Right. And it's like, oh, okay, you're right. Let's do that. Right. Oh, like, I don't like how the description takes up most of the thing. I don't use the description. You're right. Let's have it collapsible. Those things sound obvious, and they're just not.
That's exactly it. I think I could understand it better myself. That was a really good example too. Like we definitely learned a lot through that process, and I took that to every job, every contract that I worked at after that. Because like I just realized that we know nothing until we ship it to the hands of the client,
Yeah.
and that's okay. And as long as you're willing to listen, that's the key here. If you're not willing to listen, your product will probably not work. You have to be okay, and you have to be like willing to go out of your way to find that bad information, like to willing to get rake in all those negative comments on it and then figure out which ones you need to fix as quickly as possible and fix them quickly.
And I mean, I feel for larger companies. Like obviously we did this with our friends and family group with our double testing. I feel for the big companies because the big companies are going to get mixed messages. Like you're going to get that 20% that like, this is an outrage, but yet they wouldn't leave your platform anyway. They're just kind of screaming on social media. And it's like, is this a real outrage? Like, should we really remove this? But then what do we do about the other 80%? I see, like, you can see where the mixed messaging, messes up. And like with the whole like hospital thing, like with the newcomer effect, it's like it's really difficult. Like the hospital is focused not on the UX of their building, is focused obviously on medicine and things like that. However, the tertiary experience of the newcomer effect, someone walking in, is affecting it. Like, I was interrupting that nurse. I created a bit of a line at a wrong desk. I was in there longer than I should have been during COVID. It's like, what is going on here, right? It's like, there's a yes, you guys are focused on medical, but there needs to be a bit of a consideration here where it's like, hey, we need to get this right, and then we'll put signs up, and then once the signs are up, more or less, doctors aren't moving every day, so those signs might be good for 5 to 10 years. Spend a little time, spend a little money on it now, and now you have a smooth logistical hospital that's able to do medicine more primarily, right? There's less of like the people that are lost and they don't know where to go, and there's people wandering around, they're late for appointments. That's huge, causing backups, like things like that. And like, I'm just using the hospital example as an example. There's so many things that you could take this and apply it to in the real world and in the digital world as well, that it's I don't know, I should rewrite that article.
Yeah.
With a modern take, although it's like not that old, but it's on parchment.
I think
I think that's
it
it though.
Yeah.
Mike, why don't you run the conclusion of the web news?
I don't think there is a conclusion to the web news. I think it's just that's it, folks. That's all. No, I'm really glad you tuned in. If you like this kind of content, I think you should also check out our main form, which is our weekly podcast that we release on Tuesdays. And yeah, let us know what you think, and we'll continue to provide you more snippets of where we are, what we think about these tech things, right? Maybe at some point we'll cover news. Maybe at some point we'll cover random UX questions that we have to each other. They've been fun. I really like the web news.
They've been really great, and it's great to get on video for the first time ever. It forced me to get this key light working, and then also realize that you need to measure key lights because I have another one that's way too big. So a lesson learned there as well.
Goodbye.
Bye.